Shalom. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahabashi, Bahashem, Rachakodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, because those are the men who I learned this truth from through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahabashi. Yahweh is the true name of the God of Israel. Yahabashi is who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, but his one and only true name is Yahabashi. And pretty much I want to do this video concerning the spiritual power that Elijah had, because like I said, I'm still laying back enough of the fact that the video I heard with Apostle Tahar about the spiritual power that everybody should have watched. And then, like I said, I watched Apostle Gabal's response video first before actually watching the original video that Apostle Tahar did. So I just finished doing a video not too long ago. I'm waiting for it to upload, but my signal is slow, on all the miracles that Yahabashi did. And then he did so many miracles, it's not even contained in the book, but in the kingdom of heaven, when we all drinking that wine that Yahabashi been holding for over 2,000 plus years, when we drink that wine, you know, I'm pretty positive he's gonna share this. All right, but this video is to focus on Elijah, the supernatural spiritual power that Elijah had. Everything that you read about that he did, as well as other men of the Lord, as well as the Messiah himself, we're gonna actually have this power. All right, so now let's get into it. So this is what I typed in. I typed in Elijah's supernatural power in the Old Testament, aka spiritual power, right? Elijah is one of the most prominent prophets in the Old Testament. Yes, he is one of the most prominent, well-known prophets, but he is the greatest prophet. As Yahabashi said, even concerning the transfiguration, which a lot of scholars, even the AI overview, it breaks that down wrong. When you read in Matthew the 17th chapter with the transfiguration, Yahabashi being above, you know, his body transfigured in the glorified angelic state. On one side is Moses, which represents the law. On the other side is Elijah, which represents the prophets. Yahabashi being illuminated and above both of them, meaning that he's above the law and the prophets. Elijah wasn't actually there. That was just like a visual, like a hologram. All right? Because there's no verse that says that, oh, Elijah was talking, oh, Moses was talking. No, it was like a hologram. All right? So it says, continuing on, renowned for his intense spiritual-led confrontations with wicked kings, false idols in Israel. His supernatural powers stem from a profound, obedient relationship with Yahweh, enabling him to command the elements, provide miraculous substance, and even conquer death. It says major demonstrations of his supernatural abilities include weather control. Through prayer, that's the key thing, through prayer, Elijah declared a severe drought upon the land that lasted for 3.5 years. When he prayed again, Yahweh sent heavy rain. Miraculous provision. During the famine, Yahweh used ravens to feed Elijah at the brook Cherith. Later, he miraculously multiplied a poor widow's flour and oil so they never ran out. Calling down fire. On Mount Carmel, Elijah challenged the 450 prophets of Baal to a contest. It says Yahweh answered his prayer by sending fire from heaven, which incinerated his water-drenched sacrifice, the wood, stones, and surrounding water. It says raising the dead. See, this ain't no New Testament concept. It says, when the widow's son died, Elijah cried out to Yahweh, who restored the boy's life. Supernatural speed and stamina. The hand of Yahweh came upon Elijah, allowing him to outrun King Ahab's chariot over rugged terrain from Mount Carmel to Jezreel, parting waters. Elijah struck the Jordan River with his cloak, miraculously parting the waters so he and his disciple Elisha could cross on dry ground. And these were things that he was physically doing. All right, this ain't no fiction. This ain't magic. No, this is the power of Yahweh. All right, that he gave unto Elijah to do these things. Why? Because he was a faithful servant. Elijah always prayed before these supernatural things happened. All right. Ascension to heaven. It says instead of dying, Elijah was taken directly up into heaven in a whirlwind, which is a so-called UFO or chariot, accompanied by a chariot and horses of fire. All right. Which is talking about the so-called UFOs. He was beamed up. All right. Which was a prelude to how we would be beamed up. The same thing happened with Enoch. If you could receive it, you know, that was Elijah, his past life. He was Enoch. He got taken up the same exact way. Enoch walked with the Most High in that specific generation. And then the Most High, through predestination, when he came back as Elijah, the same similar thing happened. All right, which is a prelude for us, how we're going to be taken up. Same way how Yahushua was resurrected, he was beamed up. That's the same way the elect is going to receive salvation. All right. So now, let's see. So that's it with that. So now let's go to the next bulletin and get into some scriptures. So this is what I typed in. I typed in Elijah in the Bible, supernatural Bible verses. It says Elijah's life in the Bible features some of the most dramatic supernatural events, mostly recorded in 1st and 2nd Kings. These include calling down fire from heaven, parting a river, raising the dead, and being taken to heaven in a fiery chariot, which is a so-called UFO. The most significant supernatural events and associated Bible verses for Elijah include fire from heaven. At Mount Carmel, Elijah challenged 450 prophets of Baal. Yahweh miraculously sent fire to consume Elijah's completely soaked sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and even the water in the trench. That's in 1 Kings 18 and 38. So that's the first one we're going to read in the NLT. All these scriptures I'm reading it in the NLT. This is the NLT version. This is 1 Kings 18, and I want to get to the point. The point is in 38. We know that much, but that's kind of like start up a little bit. All right. Let's see if they got like a headline. The headline is all the way up there. It's all the way up there because it's dealing with this topic, but I don't want to read all that. All right. But let's see. I do want to kind of like start up. Let's see. Okay, 1 Kings 18. Damn, I'm gonna have to read it. Okay. I'm just getting straight to it. So 1 Kings 18 and 21 now, NLT. Then Elijah stood in front of them and said, if you want to know the full account of this, just read all the verses above. All right? Yeah. 1 Kings 18:21 NLT. Then Elijah stood in front of them and said, how much longer will you waver, hobbling between two opinions? If the Lord is the Most High, or Yahweh is the Most High, follow him. But if Baal is God, then follow him. But the people were completely silent. Then Elijah said to them, I am the only prophet of Yahweh who is left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Now bring 2 bulls. The prophets of Baal may choose whichever one they wish, and cut it into pieces and lay it on the wood of their altar, but without setting fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and lay it on the wood on the altar, but not set fire to it. Then call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of Yahweh. The God who answers by setting fire to wood is the true God. And all the people agreed. Because what is this dealing with? The contest on Mount Carmel. All right? So it's like a contest. If your God is real, we're going to see the fire come down. If my God is real, the fire going to come down. And I know it's going to come down. It says, continuing on. Let's see where I was at. Okay. So it says, and all the people agreed. NLT 25. Then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, you go first, for there are many of you. 450 verses 1, right? This is the contest. Whose God is real, right? Choose one of the bulls and prepare it and call on the name of your God, but do not set fire to the wood. So they prepared one of the bulls and placed it on the altar. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning until noontime, shouting, "O Baal, answer us," because it's an idol. It can't talk back. Just read Psalms 115, and there's plenty of other scriptures. Psalms 135, Psalms 96 and 5. It says, but there was no reply of any kind. Then they danced, hobbling around the altar they had made. See, so their God didn't answer them because their God is an idol. It says, about noontime, Elijah began mocking them. You'll have to shout louder, he scoffed, for surely he is a god, right? Mocking their gods. Perhaps he is daydreaming or is relieving himself, or maybe he is away on a trip or is asleep and needs to be awakened. So Elijah, he mocking them because, you know, Baal ain't a real God. Only Yahweh is the true and living God. It says, so they shouted louder, and following their normal custom, they cut themselves with knives and swords until blood gushed out. They raved all afternoon until the time of the evening sacrifice, but still there was no sound, no reply, no response. Why? Because Baal doesn't exist. It says, then Elijah called to the people, come over here. They all crowded around him as he repaired the altar of the Lord, right, of Yahweh, that had been torn down. He took 12 stones, one to represent each of the 12 tribes of Israel, and he used the stones to rebuild the altar in the name of Yahweh. Because whenever you have an altar, you had the name of the Lord there, right? It's just like us. You know, wherever we set up camp or do a video at, that's our altar. It's just like how we open up our videos. Want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh B'Shem El Shai. That's our altar. All right? It goes on to say, then he dug a trench around the altar large enough to hold about 3 gallons. He piled wood on the altar, cut the bull into pieces, and laid the pieces on the wood. Then he said, fill 4 large jars with water and pour the water over the offering and the wood. After they had done this, he said, do the same thing again. And when they were finished, he said, now do it a 3rd time. So they did it as he said. And the water ran around the altar and even filled the trench. At the usual time for offering and evening sacrifice, Elijah the prophet walked up to the altar and prayed, O Yahweh, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, prove today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant. Prove that I have done all this at your command. O Yahweh, answer me. Answer me so these people will know that you, O Yahweh, are God, and that you have brought them back to yourself. It says, immediately the fire of Yahweh flashed down from heaven and burnt up the young bull, the wood, the stones, and the dust. It even licked up all the water in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell face down on the ground and cried out, the Lord he is God. Yahweh, he is God. Yes, Yahweh is God. Then Elijah commanded, cease all the prophets of Baal, don't let a single one escape. So the people seized them all, and Elijah took them down to the Kishon Valley and killed them there. And that goes back to Deuteronomy 13. All right? Just read it. I did a video on it. So that's the first one. So now, let's get the second one that they got here. Supernatural endurance, right? So let's get the first one in 1 Kings 17:6. NLT, 1 Kings 17:6. But I'm going to start at 1. Elijah fed by ravens. It says, now Elijah, who was from Tishbe in Galilee, told King Ahab, as surely as the Lord, right, Yahweh, God of Israel lives, the God I serve, there will be no dew or rain during the next few years until I give the word. You see how powerful a prophet is? A prophet could pray to the Most High to stop rain. We're going to have this power when you read Zechariah. I believe it's Zechariah or Zephaniah, the 12th chapter and like verse 7. All right, we're going to have that type of power in the kingdom of heaven. We're not just like quoting shit, and we're just grown men that believe in magic and fiction, and we got a little kid mind and shit. No, this is real power we're going to have, along with immortality. NLT, verse 2. Then the Lord said to Elijah, Yahweh said to Elijah, go to the east and hide by Cherith Brook, near where it enters the Jordan River. It says, drink from the brook and eat what the ravens bring you, for I have commanded them to bring you food. So the Lord, he controls all organisms. He controls everything in every realm. He's the God of Israel. He's the Father of spirits, the one above all, right? NLT, verse 5. So Elijah did as Yahweh told him and camped beside Cherith Brook, east of Jordan. The ravens brought him bread and meat each morning and evening, and he drank from the brook. And now a point I want to make is the fact that during Jacob's trouble, when brothers lose their job, you might be a brother with a family, or you might be a brother that don't got a family, but you got a wife or wives, because we know Isaiah 4:1 gonna kick in, right? Some of them probably be pregnant during that time. Who knows? But don't doubt Yahweh and Yahawashi, all right? Keep the faith until the very end, even if you have to be a martyr for this truth. When you read Luke 1:37, nothing is impossible with Yahweh, the God of Israel, and he's dealing with us through Yahawashi, all right? So this is a miracle that happened. He can do this in this lifetime as well, whatever he chooses to do, all right? So it says, the ravens brought him bread and meat each morning and evening, and he drank from the brook, right? Fresh water. It says, but after a while, the brook dried up, for there was no rainfall anywhere in the land. Going back to what he said, right? Now, that's going to this. The widow at Zarephath, verse 8 NLT. Then Yahweh said to Elijah, go and live in the village of Zarephath, near the city of Sidon. It says, I have instructed a widow there to feed you. It says, so he went to Zarephath. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but whatever, all right? As he arrived at the gates of the village, he saw a widow gathering sticks, and he asked her, will you please bring me a little water in a cup? As she was going to get it, he called to her, bring me a bite of bread too. But she said, I swear by Yahweh your God that I don't have a single piece of bread in the house, and I have only a handful of flour left in a jar and a little cooking oil in the bottom of the jug. It says, I was just gathering a few sticks to cook this last meal, and then my son and I will die. But Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go ahead and do what you've said, but make a little bread for me first. Then use what's left to prepare a meal for yourself and your son. For this is what Yahweh, the God of Israel, says. There will always be flour and olive oil left in your containers until the time when Yahweh sends rain and crops grow again. So she did as Elijah said, and she and Elijah and her family continued to eat for many days, right? There was always enough flour and olive oil left in the containers, just as Yahweh had promised through Elijah. You see that? All you gotta do is trust in the Lord. Yeah, you never experienced something. You know, maybe you might be stepping into a situation where, you know, you don't know what the fuck is gonna happen, but the Most High is with you. When the Most High say do something, do it. Don't doubt it. Just walk head up into that situation. Continuing on. Sometime later, the woman's son became sick. He grew worse and worse and finally died. Then she said to Elijah, O man of Yahweh, what have you done to me? Have you come here to point out my sins and kill my son? And Elijah replied, give me your son. And he took the child's body from her arms, carried him up the stairs to the room where he was staying, and laid the body on the bed, right? The lifeless carcass. It says, then Elijah cried out to Yahweh, O Yahweh my God, why have you brought tragedy to this widow who has opened her home to me, causing her son to die? And he stretched himself out over the child 3 times. The Lord loved threes, man. And cried out to Yahweh, O Yahweh my God, please let this child's life return to him. Keep in mind, the child's spirit is in the spiritual realm. The child's spirit, not in the body. It's just a lifeless body. It says, Yahweh heard Elijah's prayer, and the life of the child returned, and he revived. This is the type of power we're going to get through Yahweh and Yahushua. Then Elijah brought him down from the upper room and gave him to his mother. Look, he said, your son is alive. Then the woman told Elijah, now I know for sure that you are a man of Yahweh, and that Yahweh truly speaks through you. You see that? So now let's read the next account. We're going to have this type of power like this. You got to believe it. What's the next one I got here? 1 Kings 19:8. NLT, 1 Kings 19:8, right? Let me just see what's going on. Okay. I guess I could start at 1. It says Elijah flees to Sinai, right? 1 Kings 19:1. When Ahab got home, he told Jezebel everything Elijah had done, including the way he had killed all the prophets of Baal. So Jezebel sent this message to Elijah, may the gods strike me and even kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you, just as you killed them. Elijah was afraid and fled for his life. He went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, and he left his servant there. Then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. He sat down under a solitary broom tree and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Yahweh, he said. Take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors who have already died. It says, then he lay down and slept under the broom tree. It says, but as he was sleeping, an angel touched him and told him, get up and eat. Right? He looked around, and there beside his head was some bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and laid down again. Then the angel of Yahweh came again and touched him and said, get up and eat some more, or the journey ahead will be too much for you. So he got up and ate and drank. And the food gave him enough strength to travel 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of the Lord. And this is the type of food we had in the wilderness. Let's keep going. It says, now the Lord speaks to Elijah. 1 Kings 19:9. NLT. There he came to a cave where he spent the night. But the Lord said to him, Yahweh said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? Elijah replied, I have zealously served Yahweh, God Almighty, but the people of Israel have broken their covenant with you, torn down your altars, and killed every one of your prophets. I am the only one prophet left, and now they are trying to kill me too. Go out and stand before me on the mountain, Yahweh told him. And as Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by, right? Yahweh passed by, and a mighty windstorm hit the mountain, right? It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was the sound of a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And a voice said, what are you doing here, Elijah? He replied again, I have zealously served Yahweh God Almighty, but the people of Israel have broken their covenant with you, torn down your altars, and killed every one of your prophets. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too. Let's go down here. I'm not sure if I missed a point already. Let me go back. All right. Supernatural. Okay, yeah, I pretty much passed the point. It was the food. That was the point. All right. He had supernatural endurance from Yahweh through the angel, and the food he ate, he was able to do his journey of 40 days and 40 nights. All right. Next one, raising the dead. I think I read that one already. Yeah, I'm positive I read that one already. Let me just kind of proofread it again. Yeah, I read that already. All right. So now what's the next one? Parting the waters, 2 Kings 2 and 8. Let's do that one. This is 2 Kings 2 and 8, but let's start at verse 1, NLT version. Elijah taken into heaven, right? The famous story everybody knows. It says 2 Kings 2 and 1, NLT version. It says, when Yahweh was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, the whirlwind is referring to this, a so-called UFO, a chariot of the Most High, right? Let's go back. Elijah and Elisha were traveling from Gilgal, and Elijah said to Elisha, stay here, for Yahweh has told me to go to Bethel. But Elisha replied, as surely as Yahweh lives and you yourself live, I will never leave you. So they went down together to Bethel, right? It says, the group of prophets from Bethel came to Elisha and asked him, did you know that Yahweh is going to take your master away from you today? Of course I know, Elisha answered, but be quiet about it. It says, then Elijah said to Elisha, stay here, for Yahweh has told me to go to Jericho. But Elisha replied again, as surely as Yahweh lives and you yourself live, I will never leave you. So they went on together to Jericho. But you see how the Lord is setting them up, because he knows what's about to happen. Eventually he gonna have to leave them, right? NLT verse 5. Then the group of prophets from Jericho came to Elisha and asked him, did you know that Yahweh is going to take your master away from you today? Of course I know, Elisha answered, but be quiet about it. See, he don't like that, because he know that where Elijah was going at that particular generation, you can't go up there. Verse 6, then Elijah said to Elisha, stay here, for the Lord has told me to go to Jordan River. But again, Elisha replied, as surely as Yahweh lives and you yourself live, I will never leave you. So they went on together. It says 50 men from the group of prophets also went and watched from a distance as Elijah and Elisha stopped beside the Jordan River. Then Elijah folded, and keep in mind, they stopped there because everybody's kind of knowing about it now, right? They want to see this. Verse 8, then Elijah folded his cloak together and struck the water with it. The river divided. Same thing that Moses did, right? The river divided, and the two of them went across on dry ground. Same thing Moses did. This is the type of power we're going to have. Verse 9, when they came to the other side, Elijah said to Elisha, tell me what I can do for you before I am taken away. And Elisha replied, please let me inherit a double share of your spirit and become your successor, right? A double portion of the spirit. You have asked a difficult thing, Elijah replied. If you see me when I am taken up from you, then you will get your request, but if not, then you won't. As they were walking along and talking, suddenly a chariot of fire appeared, which is a so-called UFO. It's not literally like a flaming horse, all right? It says, drawn by horses of fire, right? Because it goes into that in Revelation. It describes the so-called UFOs as what? Horses, like horsepower, right? Continuing on, it says, as they were walking along and talking, suddenly a chariot of fire appeared. Drawn by horses of fire, it drove between the two men, separating them, and Elijah was carried by a whirlwind into heaven. So-called UFO. All right? This is it right here. It sent a tractor beam that beamed him up. Continuing on, it says, It says, verse 12, Elisha saw it and cried. He cried out, my father, I see the chariots and the charioteers of Israel. And as they disappeared from sight, Elisha tore his clothes in distress. Elisha picked up Elijah's cloak, which had fallen when he was taken up. Then Elisha returned to the bank of the Jordan River. All right. It says he struck the water with Elijah's cloak and cried out, where is Yahweh? It says, where is the Lord, the God of Elijah, right? Where's Yahweh? It says, then the river divided and Elisha went across. Because remember, he asked for a double portion of the spirit. So the same things that Elijah was able to do, now Elisha had them type of abilities. It says, when a group of prophets from Jericho saw from a distance what happened, they exclaimed, Elijah's spirit rests upon Elisha. And they went to meet him and bowed to the ground before him, which is a sign of reverence. All right? So that's it with that. Let's see if I got any more. All right, I read the chariot of fire. So that's pretty much it, man. You know, men of the Lord, prophets that you read about, they had supernatural abilities and what people will call miracles. Why is it a miracle? Because it goes against science. It goes against, what humans are able to do in the flesh, because these bodies have limits. All right. Even as tall and big as somebody may be, that body got limits. It can't cross certain limitations. All right. But when you're dealing with Yahweh, the God of Israel, as well as his only begotten son, Yahushua, can't leave him out. Luke 1:37, for nothing is impossible with Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua. So men of the Lord physically did these things, and we are going to have this type of power. Why? Because when you read in Revelation 20:5 and 6, it says, blessed are they which take part in that first resurrection, right? Which is the elect men of the nation of Israel. We have the privilege of stepping into that new covenant first, which involves immortality. All right, we're gonna have godlike abilities. It's gonna be beautiful, man. You gotta be there to see it and witness that. If you're not a part of the elect, you're gonna miss out on this type of experience. But ultimately, all of us would be under the new covenant. All right. But when it comes to salvation, that's strictly only for the elect of the nation of Israel. So Lord willing, you was edified by the lesson. Shalom.